Welcome to today's international news program. Here are the details. Russian forces fighting for control of the besieged Ukrainian city of Bakhmut have intensified shelling of access roads to the west, making it harder for Ukrainian forces to move in and out. Video filmed by Reuters on Friday, March 3, shows how one such route has been severed, forcing vehicles to turn back. The head of Russia's Wagner private army, which has played a major role in the siege of Bakhmut, said the city, which has been blasted to ruins, was now almost completely surrounded with only one road still open for Ukraine's troops. A vital bridge connecting the besieged city of Bakhmut to the nearby village of Kromov, and the last main supply route from Bakhmut to the city of Chasiv Yar, has been blown up overnight by Russian forces, according to multiple sources speaking with CNN. The local official told CNN that they hope to repair the bridge in the coming days. A mandatory evacuation order is in place in the Donetsk region and about 5,000 people remain in Bakhmut, according to Ukrainian officials. Victory in Bakhmut, with a pre-war population of about 70,000, would give Russia the first major prize of a costly winter offensive, after it called up hundreds of thousands of reservists last year. It says it would be a stepping stone to capturing the surrounding Donbass region, an important war aim. Russia's RIA Novosti news agency released a video on Friday, March 3, in which a serviceman identified as belonging to Russian mercenary Wagner Group blamed Ukraine for damaging the infrastructure near Bakhmut. The unnamed serviceman told a reporter that Ukrainian army blew up a bridge in an attempt to slow down the advancing Russian forces. "Given what we see, they are destroying everything to slow us down. Bridges, communications," said a well-equipped serviceman in camouflage with the latest version of the AK assault rifle in hands. Earlier on Friday, Yevgeny Prigozhin, founder of Russia's Wagner mercenary force, said in a video that the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut was practically surrounded by his forces and that Kyiv's forces had only one road left out. Prigozhin's men have spearheaded the assault in eastern Ukraine for months. Moscow regards Bakhmut, which it calls by its Soviet-era name of Artyomovsk, as a useful stepping stone to seize bigger cities like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk further west. Ukraine is managing to generate as much power as it needs, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal said on Friday, March 3, despite Russian airstrikes on its energy network. Shmyhal told a news conference just over a year after Russia's invasion that no immediate changes were planned in the government and that reforms would continue. He also said that Ukraine, which wants to join the NATO military alliance, hoped for concrete decisions from its NATO allies. Russia has carried out waves of airstrikes on energy facilities that at times have left millions of people without power, but Ukraine has quickly carried out repairs. Ukraine is for now provided with power, generating and network capacities, Shmyhal said. "We are also taking measures not to have any military risks during the next heating season." He said the government would continue reforms to meet its wartime challenges, adding that personnel changes would happen, but we did not discuss them for the near future. Kyiv has welcomed the supply of weapons from countries in NATO but also hopes that the alliance will go further than holding out the prospect of Ukraine potentially being able to join the alliance one day in the future. "Open doors are not enough for us. We are waiting for concrete decisions from our partners," Shmyhal said. The US will send £333 million in military aid to Ukraine, the Secretary of State has confirmed. Antony Blinken said a package including ammunition and a type of vehicle that can lay down bridges over rivers and ravines will be shipped to the front line. Carrying a 60-foot metal bridge, the armored vehicle-launched bridge tank could help Ukraine if they launch an offensive. It is the first time such a vehicle has been supplied to the country, which can fire a bridge forward over difficult terrain. "This is probably 90% an offensive weapon," said security and defense analyst Professor Michael Clark. "Because if you're on the defense, if you're falling back, you blow up the bridges and get on the other side of them. If you're moving forward, you need something to get over small obstacles pretty quickly, so this is what troops use," he said, adding he expects the US to send 8 of the vehicles. Shells will be supplied for light multiple rocket launcher vehicles and howitzer artillery cannons. With a value of $400 million, this package brings the total U.S. military aid to Ukraine since the outbreak of the war to more than $32 billion. Russia could find itself with no money as soon as next year and needs foreign investment, outspoken Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska has said. "There will be no money already next year, we need foreign investors," he said at an economic conference in Siberia Thursday, according to comments reported by TASS, a Russian state-owned news agency. The remarks from the billionaire, who called for an end to Moscow's war in Ukraine in the early days of the conflict last year, contrast with a more upbeat assessment of Russia's economic fortunes by President Vladimir Putin last week. Putin praised the resilience of the country's economy in the face of unprecedented Western sanctions imposed in the past year. Putin praised the resilience of the country's economy in the face of unprecedented Western sanctions imposed in the past year. More background: Russia's economic output shrank 2.1% last year, according to a preliminary estimate from the government. The contraction was more limited than many economists initially predicted. But cracks are starting to show. Russia is cutting oil production this month, and Western sanctions could escalate further. Ultimately, Russia's economic prospects are contingent on what happens in Ukraine. In a bid to starve Russia of funds for its aggression, Western countries have announced more than 11,300 sanctions since the February 2022 invasion, and frozen some $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves. Latvian President Egils Levits visited the western Ukrainian city of Lviv on Friday, March 3. Levits met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Both presidents, accompanied by their wives, visited the cemetery of the defenders in Lviv and laid flowers in a tribute to fallen Ukrainian service members. During the presidents' joint news conference, Levits was adamant about establishing a special international tribunal to try Russian leadership. Not only sanctions, but also accountability. I'm an advocate for establishing an ad hoc international tribunal, since no other international court can currently try the crime of aggression. Of course, the International Criminal Court is doing important work by gathering evidence of individual war crimes. But it is necessary, also, to try the crime of aggression, which is a leadership crime, Levits told journalists. Zelensky expressed gratitude for the decisiveness of Latvian support. Unfortunately, there are states, even states that are members of the European Union, that are not ready to act decisively and try to find compromises in the sanction packages. This makes quick victory impossible because the military infrastructure in the Russian Federation relies on this, the Ukrainian president said. Latvia has been one of the most active supporters of Ukraine during its year-long war with Russia, providing €370 million worth of military equipment and tens of thousands of euros in humanitarian aid, according to Latvian government. Over 10,000 Ukrainians found refuge in Latvia after the full-scale invasion broke out last February. Almost 10,000 Russian soldiers have contacted Ukraine's dedicated surrender helpline since September to give themselves up, according to Ukraine's coordinating headquarters for the treatment of prisoners of war, CHTPW. The 24/7 project, named I Want to Live, allows enemy combatants to contact an operator via phone or chatbot and be transferred to a prisoner of war camp. A report published by CHTPW said more than 14 million people have visited the website, 84% of whom were based in Russia. In addition to the Russian military, their relatives and loved ones contact the hotline, the agency wrote on Telegram. Often mobilized Russians who arrived in Ukraine as part of the occupying army do not have access to the internet. Ammunition might be the most glaring predicament for Ukrainian forces as they gear up for a post-winter offensive. With rapidly diminishing stockpiles for the Ukrainian military, NATO allies have repeatedly supplied the invaded nation with continuous aid in the war against Russia that reached the one-year mark on February 24. An anonymous NATO official told Reuters in mid-February that stockpiles are not meeting the current rate of production. One unnamed European diplomat said that if all of Europe were to get involved in the war, some countries would run out of ammunition in days. EU Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Chief Josep Borrell said last month in Brussels that calling it the most urgent issue. If we fail on that, the result of the war is in danger. Ukrainian Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov told Ukrinform around the same time that Ukraine has set up a military and technical supply line with NATO that should ensure assistance in the near future. But he seemed to question whether it will be enough in the long haul. In times of war, something is always missing, Reznikov said. But it is impossible to say that the situation is critical and we will not have enough ammunition to repel the onslaught. We are ready to repel the offensive. But the more ammunition we have, the better, and our partners know this, too. The Ukrainian military is firing more than 5,000 artillery rounds each day, while Russia is firing about 4 times that amount daily, the Financial Times reported. The most recent U.S. security package includes 232 howitzers and more than 2 million rounds of artillery ammunition, as well as 38 HIMARS, high-mobility artillery rocket systems, with additional 155mm rounds. Retired U.S. Marine Corps Colonel Mark Canchin told Newsweek that HIMARS artillery and DUM artillery shells have been most critical to Ukraine's cause since the war began. Whenever armies get stalemated, that really puts a premium on firepower, Canchin said. You're seeing it here, you saw it in World War I. That could change with a Ukrainian offensive, but artillery is the most important element. Gabriela Avelis Rosa Hernandez, research associate at the Arms Control Association, told Newsweek that there is no such thing as wonder weapons in a war. However, she said HIMARS and the M270 Multiple Rocket Launch System, MRLS, are providing Ukraine with an extended range to fire behind enemy lines. More range due to the guided multiple launch rocket system rockets, particularly, means an increased capability from the Ukrainian side to target weapon depots or concentrations of Russian troops, weakening Russian supply lines in Ukraine with the aid of unprecedented intelligence sharing between Ukraine and its partners, Hernandez said. However, a key element that will likely significantly affect the Ukrainian armed forces on the battlefield in the future is the fact that the West is struggling to meet Ukraine's demand for ammunition. Ukrainian forces continue to consume high quantities of ammunition that exceed supply. They will continue to do so in the spring. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said on Thursday, March 2, that Russia would not be the first to test a nuclear device, following Moscow's suspension of the New START nuclear arms control treaty with the United States. President Vladimir Putin announced the decision while reading the State of the Union address on February 21 and then signed it into law on February 28. The New START treaty was signed by then U.S. President Barack Obama and his counterpart Dmitry Medvedev in 2010, to limit the number of strategic nuclear warheads that each country could deploy. In December, Russia's Engels Air Base near the city of Saratov, home to part of its nuclear-capable strategic bomber fleet and at least 600 kilometers (370 miles) from Ukrainian territory, was hit by drone attacks. Ukraine did not claim responsibility for the attacks, but celebrated them. Ryabkov said the US and Kyiv could end the conflict in Ukraine tomorrow if they take the right decisions. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said on Thursday, March 2, that Moscow had been forced to suspend its participation in the New START nuclear arms control treaty because Washington was using it to help Ukraine attack Russian strategic sites. In December, Russia's Engels Air Base near the city of Saratov, home to part of its nuclear-capable strategic bomber fleet and at least 600 kilometers (370 miles) from Ukrainian territory, was hit by drone attacks. Ukraine did not claim responsibility for the attacks, but celebrated them. Ryabkov said the US and Kyiv could end the conflict in Ukraine tomorrow if they take the right decisions. Under these circumstances, we were forced to announce the suspension of the treaty. Protesting Ryabkov's presence at the event, the permanent representatives of the United States, France, and other Western countries at the UN in Geneva stood outside the conference room, posing with blue and yellow Ukrainian flags and signs that read #StandWithUkraine. U.S. Ambassador, Bathsheba Nell Crocker, saying, "We were all gathered today to show strong, unified solidarity with Ukraine during this time as we have done for the past year since Russia's invasion and aggression against Ukraine has continued, and we were here to make clear that Russia should not be able to participate without accountability in the international system that it is undermining." Security in the Chinese capital Beijing was beefed up ahead of the annual gathering of China's rubber stamp parliament, the National People's Congress, NPC, this Sunday, March 5.